Hello, everybody. So me and Steve Burgess, we're back, and today we're going to talk about anxiety and phobias. And Steve have been working with clients for 27 years, and he has some valuable experience that you can appreciate to hear about if you want to invest your time with us here now. All right, Steve, welcome.
Hi, Kenneth. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you.
Anxiety. I mean, I often say there's like an epidemic of anxiety out there in the world. It's quite extraordinary the number of people who feel anxious and struggle with anxiety on a day-to-day basis. In some cases, of course, it really takes their lives over. They're hardly able to live life effectively and freely because they just feel so damned anxious all the time. Horrible.
Yeah. What do you think? In your opinion and your experience, because you have a professional experience with this, working with the root cause of anxiety with people through the years. So from your perspective, what's causing anxiety? Why are people so anxious? Why do people have panic attacks? What is happening? Why is the anxiety, the stress building up to the point where, I mean, it comes out as actually anxiety and you have to go to the doctor to get pills that give you more anxiety and so on? What's happening?
Yeah. Generally, it's an emotional state. Generally, it's emotions that are locked in the person that are actually coming out in the form of anxiety. Having said that, there are some people whose anxiety is caused by physical problems. For example, if a woman's thyroid, the Shilbrook-Shirtland, isn't working correctly, then that can cause anxiety. So sometimes if there's something physically going wrong in the body, that can make a person feel anxious. But in the vast majority of cases, it's an emotional state. It's locked in emotions from the past, from past traumas that are coming out in the subconscious and making the anxiety come through. So you mentioned panic attacks. A panic attack is really when the anxiety state gets so big that it blows out. It has a blowout. It's like an explosion of anxiety. And what that does, it releases a lot of the pressure that's in the person, you could say. I talk a lot about the emotional pressure cooker we all have. And it releases a lot of the emotion. And the pressure then is down and calmer for a while. So in one way, a panic attack is a good thing because it releases some of the angst for a period of time. But of course, anybody who suffers from a panic attack will know just how dreadful it is when you're in the middle of one, because you actually feel like you're out of control. Yeah. Your heart's beating, you're shaking, your mind's racing. It's a really terrifying experience. It really is. And so there's no wonder people run to the doctors, but of course the doctors don't have the answer because the doctors are just into, as you said, giving them a tablet, which often the side effects of the tablet make the anxiety worse. And again, sometimes with people with depression, they get an antidepressant tablet, and one of the main side effects of antidepressants is that they dry the mouth up. Now, a dry mouth is a sign of anxiety. So you make somebody's mouth go dry, their mind believes they're anxious. So by giving an antidepressant, it makes the person more anxious. Doesn't make sense, does it?
Steve, do you think drinking water then? Because I mean, if you're dry in your mouth, you're either stressed or dehydrated. But I think also that by being dehydrated, you stress your body.
Yeah.
So would water actually contribute to reducing anxiety in people?
Very much so, yeah. So two things there. A dehydrated body is a stressed body. And it's said that I think in America, 70% of Americans are chronically dehydrated most of the time. So what do we do? How do we offset that? We keep the mouth as moist as possible, as wet as possible. So always have spit in the mouth, just as one thing. Always have good water, and keep sipping water, because what that does is and of course, again, if a person is dehydrated, they need to drink quite a lot of water regularly, and that calms the whole body system down. And because the body comes calmer, the mind feels calmer as well. Yes. Because we know the mind and body are completely connected. So very much so, just by keeping the mouth moist, even thinking spit and creating spit in the mouth can actually help for the body to calm down.
Yeah, I can actually, when I drink a cup of coffee in the morning, my mouth gets really dry, even though I drink a lot of water as well.
Yeah.
So I think actually the caffeine in coffee actually causes anxiety in people, especially if you're sensitive to it. Yeah. So what do you think about coffee, nicotine, and like these kind of habits that people have? Do they contribute to to like reduce anxiety or enhance it, or is it like, will some people not even be bothered by it?
I mean, certainly with the caffeine, some people it doesn't have much of an effect on. They do get away with it. But most people, caffeine is what I call liquid stress. Any cup of coffee, as soon as you put caffeine in the body, it triggers a stress response in the body. Now, if you've got somebody who's already anxious, if they're already suffering from angst and they keep drinking caffeine, it's like putting benzene on a fire. It's like putting petrol on a fire. They're actually making themselves worse. So on one level, caffeine is liquid stress. So in my opinion, very few of us should be drinking more than 1 or 2 cups a day. Unfortunately, the Norwegian people are obsessed with coffee and drink bucketfuls of it every day. And obviously a living stress. I mean, just giving themselves stress all the time. Having said that, I mean, there's not a problem with if somebody doesn't have anxiety, then a cup, 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day isn't a problem. Certainly somebody with anxiety should cut caffeine out completely. The second thing with coffee is it dries the mouth out. So it has this double effect. You get the caffeine stimulant effect. You get a dry mouth, and a dry mouth triggers in the mind a sign of anxiety. So even drinking water doesn't have a big effect. You should really cut the caffeine out as much as possible if you've got anxiety. Now, cigarettes, of course, you'll always get the smoker who fools themselves. Well, I have a cigarette and it relaxes me. Well, that's bullshit. Simple as. There is no way on this earth that anybody can inject 4,500 toxic chemicals into the body with each puff of cigarettes and it's relaxing the body. It's not possible. It just is not possible. They believe it relaxes them, but that's the power of the mind. That's nothing to do with the cigarette. But you'll often get the smokers who fool themselves. Oh, a cigarette relaxes me. No, it doesn't. It has a massive stimulating effect on the body, but they believe it relaxes them, but it doesn't. It's just a belief. Yeah. So again, but of course, one of the problems with anxiety, if a person is smoking, they often smoke more because of the anxiety. Yeah. And what they need to do is to be helped to have more control to release that. All these reactions, people will maybe eat more chocolate because they're feeling up tense, but of course chocolate's full of caffeine and sugar, and the sugar creates more of a stress response in the body. So there is all these physical effects that can be helped, and it's a question of how do we help the person who's got anxiety.
So that's the physical part. And do you think the most important part is the traumas?
Personally, yes. Yes, in most cases.
I think so too. I think even the trauma that we carry or the intense emotional charged memories that we carry also make us have habits like smoking, overeating and eating chocolate or whatever habit that is. So what is like if you work with a person that comes to you with massive anxiety and that person had been diagnosed with anxiety in some kind of way, or panic attacks, having regular panic attacks, how do you go ahead and work with that person? Do you handle the physical parts and aspects of this like we're talking about, or do you mention them, or do you go straight to working with the emotional root cause of anxiety?
In a first session, I tend to do both. The first thing I often ask about caffeine, certainly get the person to reduce caffeine. Because if a person has got a lot of caffeine inside them, I mean, for example, I had a gentleman who came who couldn't sleep. He could not sleep. He was sleeping for 2 hours a night, and 2 hours a night for months and months. And I asked him, I said, do you drink very much coffee? Oh, yes, he said, yeah. Okay. And he said, well, he ran his own garage. He was a motor mechanic. And he had boys and men fixing cars all day long, mending cars. Very busy motor garage. And all day long, he said, I have a big grandad mug and I never let it out my hand. And all day long, I'm just topping up the grandad mug. Okay. I'm seeing the jobs in, I'm seeing the customers go out again. We worked out he was drinking 33 cups of coffee a day. Now, you know, that's the cause of his angst. That's the cause of his sleep problems. His body just couldn't relax. So in his case, it was obvious there was no major traumas. He just had to reduce caffeine over time to get it out of his system. Over time, that was important. Because if it had stopped immediately, he'd have had massive side effects. But so generally with a client with anxiety, I'll talk about caffeine and ask them to reduce it. Drink lots of water, that's very important. If they're a smoker, then we can leave the cigarettes for now. They need the cigarettes. But what I'm wanting to do is to start working on the emotional traumas, which are almost certainly causing the anxieties. So what I'll do in the first session, obviously we'll use hypnotherapy, we'll use hypnosis. And one of the nice things about hypnosis is that it's a form of relaxation. And so just by doing hypnosis, people start to feel less anxious. So I'll give them hypnotic recordings to play, and get them to play some hypnotic recordings in between sessions so they become more calm, and they're generally trying to calm themselves down. But what I'm really wanting to do as well as this is work on the emotional traumas. So we'll find out from the client what's happened in their life. Have there been any major traumas in their life? And sometimes that's all we need to do. We just find out, let's say, they may say, I've had the anxieties for 15 years and 15 years ago I had a terrible divorce. Or 15 years ago my husband died, or whatever. That's often the cause of the problem, when we can work specifically on that to neutralize the emotional pain that they're carrying. But sometimes we don't know where the anxiety comes from.
So that was my question then, because when I work with people, some would say, yeah, I have some things that happened, but I can't remember anything from the past. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's causing this. Because like you said, okay, they had a divorce 15 years ago, but that was just a trigger. There's something more than that.
Usually there is. And I mean, you know, what we do, both of us in our own way with clients, is we do techniques where we're finding from the subconscious what is causing this problem. And the subconscious knows. It knows everything. The subconscious knows everything there is to know about the person. And if we ask the subconscious, using these techniques that we have, it will often tell us. It will often say it was childhood, or it was the time of the person's birth. They may be carrying a lot of birth trauma. And so many people carry birth trauma through their lives. It's locked in the body. And we regress through that.
I mean, I think everyone's, not everyone, but most of people suffer from birth trauma. I mean, just coming out to this life through the birth canal, and like coming out to all the light and the smell and the sounds and everything. I think it's, I think everybody should do a session or 2 or 3 or 5 with doing some releasing some birth trauma anyways. With problems or not.
Well, rebirthing is incredibly powerful, and I've had many clients whose problems have started with the birth trauma, and they've held it all their life. And I have a colleague who says, in his opinion, most people have got birth trauma. Even if the birth wasn't traumatic, even if it was not outwardly traumatic, the very act of being squeezed down this little narrow canal it usually compresses the body. The person feels that they have no control. The baby has no control. And that's the other thing we should mention, because people often think the baby is just some sort of vegetable. It isn't aware of anything. No, the baby is an intelligent, thinking, feeling being. It understands what's happening to it. And so it knows that this is painful. It knows it has no control. And certainly we're going to talk about phobias. I'm going to talk about having no control is a cause of a phobia very often. So some phobias come from birth, because one of the problems of being phobic is you have no control over the thing that's triggering it.
Being trapped.
Being trapped is the second thing, what we call claustrophobia, being stuck in this confined space as well. So birth is massively significant, but also the traumas can come from before this life. They come from our previous lifetimes. They come from our ancestors' lives, our forefathers. And all of this trauma is locked in the subconscious. It just keeps churning the trauma over and over, day after day, causing the angst, and the person just responds to the subconscious trauma by feeling anxious.
Yeah. Can I ask you, why aren't we releasing this by ourselves? Why are this held in the body, you think?
I don't know. It's just the way, it's the system maybe. It's what we have to do in order to grow as human beings, as souls. There is a part of me that questions why we have to do all this anyway. I have to keep coming back, but maybe it's just the system that's the thing. We have to grow over many lifetimes.
Yeah. So trauma pushes us to grow.
I think so. You know, there's an English phrase: "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," and that's one aspect.
Yeah.
But yes, you know, it makes us grow. We grow as human beings. We grow as souls. If things are so easy, we don't grow very much.
So, and why? I mean, animals in nature, for example, if a zebra is chased by a lion, and that zebra runs like for its life, and it turns takes a right turn, and the lion just grazes it, and not really catching it, and the zebra runs away. When it's safe, it lies down and it starts shaking for 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then when it's finished, like when the automatic shaking is done, it gets up and lives happily ever after. You know what I mean? So wild animals have a system instinctively where they discharge trauma, because that was a trauma being discharged in a natural way. And like we know, I mean, we can also shake after something intense has happened. We can cry, laugh, or some way else. But I think shaking and crying is maybe the two most natural way of releasing. And it's almost, we have forgotten this. It's almost like we have to be strong. We have to hold this in. We have to. But even as little children, it's almost like we're just programmed to hold everything in. We're not allowed to express what wants to come out.
Yeah, good way. Good words. Yeah. Well, as well as that, I think we have to survive as human beings. We have to survive, and we also understand them. We're thinking beings, and I think when we've had a trauma, we contemplate it. Whereas I think animals tend to let go of things. They don't sort of remember things like we do. I think we just contemplate it and rerun it over and over, and that also re-stimulates the trauma and keeps it inside us. But yeah, I mean, as we do, in regression, we see a lot of emotional releases. Sometimes our clients are screaming, yelling, shaking, but that is actually releasing the trauma in a very deep and powerful way. And then the anxiety goes. It just goes.
And the importance of for us as therapists creating that space for people to be allowing themselves to release that trauma in the way it needs to be released. If that is screaming, shaking, or even not making a sound, just by being completely quiet, like everything just releases, like allowing the body to release naturally. And and that's a powerful thing with regression and hypnotherapy, I think.
Very much
just because
so.
it creates that space for that to happen.
Yes.
Of course, combined with the therapist a therapist like you, who actually have the courage to go to guide people into the root cause of things, because that's another thing that I think is needed amongst therapists today. People that have the courage enough to actually go into the root of things, not just being on the surface, because I do think that works for an amount of time, but if you don't take the root cause, then it will pop up in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. If you do some nice, pretty therapy, which makes a person feel better, but the problem is still there, the energy is still there, it's going to come out, as you say, in some way. So, you know, for me, the best way is to get in, release the emotions, release the feelings, the person gets better. Having said that, of course, if we're doing EFT, the tapping process, sometimes we can just tap on the body while the person is in the trauma, and it taps it down very quickly as well.
Yes.
So, you know, the nice thing about the therapy techniques we're using is that they're very effective. Usually they're very fast.
Yeah.
An EFT is just part of the tool bag that we have.
Yeah. And also, since we're talking about trauma, let's say people that have had like massive traumatic life, like, okay, so I'm working with this person and I'm talking about going into the root cause, and she's like, okay, so do you think we're gonna like have only 5 sessions? We need at least 15 years to do this because I had a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing about working with the root cause, because that is different. It's the metaphor of like traumas are stacked upon each other, and when you take the root of it, it's like the domino effect. You don't need to go into every trauma. You can, if you when you cooperate with the subconscious mind, then you find the root of it, and that's not a lot of work, actually. That can be over in, like you say, 2 sessions or 5 or 10, who knows, but it is fast. It is fast.
Yeah.
Because we go into the root of it.
Yeah. Having said that, sometimes the root has got its own roots. And so sometimes you do have to work with all the roots. It isn't just about taking one, you've got to hit a lot. But every client's different. With some clients, you can just hit 1 or 2 big traumas and they're completely healed and released and freed up. And others, they need quite a lot of work on lots of different issues, lots of different causes, lots of different traumas that all are in the melting pot, all feeding into the bucket full of negativity that's causing the problem.
Yes.
So
do you think, Steve, that what do you think is the essential ingredient in a regression session that allows the person to release the trauma? What do you think is like the main ingredient there that is like key for releasing? What needs to happen for us to release trauma?
I suppose as much as anything else, it's if the client is good at regression, because not everybody regresses well. So you do need to have a client who is able to go back into the past and relive the traumas and release them. But not everybody can do that, which is quite frustrating. I don't think there's any particular sort of key. You've got to have courage to do this. Both the client and the therapist need to have courage to work in this way. But as much as anything else, I think it needs the client to be good at, and they don't know that if they're good at regression until they come to us. And if they can come to us and regress, okay, then we're fine. We can do the work. But I'm not sure there's any particular key, I would say, that any magic key. For me, it's about the client naturally being able to regress or not. And some people just can't seem to regress, which is frustrating. But then we use other techniques, of course.
That's the brilliant part.
We've all got our bags of tools, and we're just there to get the tools out to help the clients as much as possible.
Do you think that you said reliving the trauma? So that may sound kind of scary for many, but just by my experience working with people, it's not reliving it in that unsafe environment. You're in a completely safe state and a safe place. So you're reliving it in your body, in your emotions, and in your mind, and not being physically there. And that, for our body or our subconscious mind, that is the same as actually reliving it.
Yes.
But because that thing there is like the animal, like the zebra shaking. Reliving it gives us the opportunity to go back into it and then feel it over again, like it is happening now. And by doing so, it releases.
Yes, very much so. So there is a separation. It's not like you are back in, if you've died in battle in a past life, you're not in the battle, it's gone. But all you're doing is your body is re-experiencing what happened in the battle. So, you can't die again. You're not going to end up with an axe in your head, or there's no blood at the end of the session. Science. I often say to clients, if we have to go back in a past life and you died in battle, we don't finish the session that you won't have one of your legs propped up against the wall and blood spattered all over the wall. That doesn't happen. There is this separation. It's just an energy that's coming through from the past that's been trapped that we're releasing.
Yeah.
And having said that, I mean, that all sounds dramatic, and not all regression, as we know, is that dramatic. Some regression sessions are really quite simple and easy, and the releasing is done in a gentle way. Sometimes, of course, the client doesn't release anything, but gets an understanding of the problem. That's why this has been happening to me. And that insight gets them better as well. But yeah, we talk in the dramatic terms because it's always interesting, but not every client goes into the screaming and yelling.
Of course not.
It's just about releasing the stuff.
I do, and this is something we've been talking about. The subconscious will take us through it in the way that is safe for us, in the way we need to go through it to release. So it's not something that we need to control or need to like set an intention to how we're gonna experience it. It's just a natural releasing of.
And the subconscious knows best. It knows what to do. We are facilitating the thing. We're just helping the subconscious to work with it. And again, I mean, if we just move on about phobias, we're talking about phobias. I mean, a phobia is an anxiety state that is connected to a specific thing. And again, you know, we're going back to the root cause of that phobia, wherever it is, to release it. So, you know, flying phobia. We see many people with flying phobia.
Yeah.
And many of my clients with flying phobias, they've actually died in a past life where they've been in a plane, maybe in a warfare, the First World War, Second World War. And, you know, just going back to what we're saying, they go back through the death in the past life. They're not dead now. They're not dead now. They've just released the death process. They go through the death, they go into spirit, and the anxiety goes. So it's always important I often say to people, you know, it's in the past. Whatever has happened is in the past. You're just suffering the effects of this cause. And if we can release the cause, the effect will go. So,
So when you're talking about phobias, it's just, can I share something, like an experience for that? I remember working with a woman. She had a phobia, claustrophobia, and we asked the subconscious, okay, so where is the root cause of this anxiety, this phobia? And it told us it was 4 past lives, and this person was completely shut off from past life. It was like, what? Past lives? What is that? And I remember actually it doesn't matter. We could call it Babalubu or I mean, whatever it is. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just a definition. We don't need to believe it's a past life. Maybe it's just a metaphor that the brain creates that makes fits the story of how that phobia was created. I don't know, whatever. But for me, it's past lives. But it doesn't matter if the client believes in it or not. She was open to releasing the phobia. So we did 4 past life, but there was no visuals. I mean, she weren't seeing anything, like nothing, or maybe she was, but you know, some clients think that they are fantasizing or they're making it up, so they can maybe sometimes avoid telling us what they're experiencing. But okay, so after going through the 4 past lives, and I think we did it in 4 sessions actually, 1 per session. She found herself in being in London in an underground tube, and you know how crowded and how there's no room for moving around there, and she was like, she didn't think about anything. She was just noticing her husband sweating, and she was like, "What, are you afraid?" And she was like, "Oh shit, where's the anxiety? Where's the?" That's fascinating. And that was the person didn't believe in past life, didn't believe in regression, but she was desperate to release or to get better. And by just going through it and feeling it in her body, okay, so feeling the pain in the neck, or the heart beating in the chest, or the pain in the legs, or the pressure in the stomach, whatever the physical symptoms we release by feeling the physical symptoms, even if we don't see visual.
I had a client with, again, severe claustrophobia, and I think there were 7 past lives causing hers. And, you know, for 1 past life, she was buried alive, which was pretty unpleasant. Claustrophobia, she's trapped, she can't get out of this small place. In another past life, she was in the Second World War in London as a woman, very scared because her husband was in the Navy, so he'd gone off to war, and she was on her own. And of course, in the Blitz in London, they were dropping bombs everywhere, so she's terrified in the small bomb shelter, just this small brick house, brick hut outside of her house. Terrified in case a bomb drops, and she's closed in, she can't get out because she's trapped. She was working in a munitions factory, and then in London, and then she gets trapped in the tube in a bombing raid in London, you know, the metro people would probably know as, and she couldn't get out. And again, this small enclosed space, thousands of people all crammed down the stairs, all in the tube station, waiting for the bombs to finish dropping, trying to stay safe. And then eventually her house is bombed, and she gets trapped under the stairs, because they were taught in the Second World War, if you can't get out, go and sit in the cupboard under the stairs. That's the safest place in the house. And she did that, but then the house got bombed. It's all burning, and she can't get out then because she's trapped by rubble and burning doors, and she dies. So, you know, she had all these incredible past life experiences, but it cured the claustrophobia. And they weren't fun, but she had no belief in past lives either. And I had to keep convincing her that this is going to work, it's okay, this will work. And eventually she did get better. So, yeah, it's just, with regression, I think, is such an amazing way to cure phobias. I really do.
It is.
And remember, there's a phobia for everything. So we treat phobias from, phobias from what? Mice, spiders, all the common ones. I like to talk about the lady in England who had a phobia of the holes in the middle of donuts, which is quite remarkable. So,
of course, that's a trauma. I mean, just there's no logic in that, but of course, the logic in it is that it comes from trauma.
Yes,
and probably it was not a trauma eating donuts. There was something else.
No, it would be something else. It could. I mean, I didn't work with her. I heard about this. My guess is that she was probably a child and she was hurt or beaten by a parent or something like that, and traumatized. Maybe when there was some donuts around. So the subconscious sort of puts the pain onto something that's close by. In that case, maybe donuts. She might have been outside a bakery when mommy was hitting her one day. So
this is interesting, because this is like the connection to how the subconscious creates trauma.
Yeah.
Like you said, if there's something, it's like pollen allergy. I mean, you're in a car accident and it's pollen in the air, and you can like develop a pollen allergy.
Yes. Yeah. I had a client who was in Stavanger, as it happened, and she had a severe pollen allergy, and every year, spring and summer, was misery for her, total misery. And we found that it actually came from a past life where she died of starvation in the past life. You think, what the hell's that got to do with a pollen allergy? But she was so desperate to try to stay alive that she was eating grass as she was dying, just to try to eat something, because she was starving to death. And actually, as she was eating the grass, she was choking and vomiting all the time because it was such a horrible experience. That was the cause of the pollen allergy. And we released it. So she's had great summers ever since then.
Very good. And she released it by revisiting it and
revisiting it. Yeah.
Because I think if we remember trauma, of course we don't want to go in and relive it. Or with respect to psychologists and the old way of doing therapy, talking about the problem. I mean, talking about the problem makes people think that they're over it. Yeah, that's 20 years ago. I'm over it now. I talked about it with a therapist 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and I challenge every person that says that to me. I mean, okay, so we can check, but if you just talked about it, there's a huge chance that it's not released.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I would love if talking about it would work, but that's I think talking about it again and again and again, talking about our problems over and over again, is just making them stronger and just rewiring our brain to focus on the problems.
Yes. Yeah.
So
in therapy times they call it re-stimulation. If you keep doing it over and over, it re-stimulates. And it's yeah, it's the old-fashioned way of doing things, but it doesn't work. That it works for some people. Of course, anything will work for some people.
It works to vent.
And letting go is useful, but unless the person is really letting go at a deeper level, it's not deep enough. You're quite right. I've seen many people who have been to me over the years who've said, I've been to see a therapist, I've been to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist. Well, why are you here? Because it obviously didn't work. However good you thought they were, it hasn't worked because the problem is still with you, because they didn't work on the roots.
Yeah. And that's why I said also before I said that respect to the psychologist doing this, because I think everyone that goes into a profession working with people have intentions to help people. It's just that I think that we have to include the body. I believe we have to include the physical body to actually go into have techniques that allows the body to release it, because it's on cellular level, like cell memory. I mean, even our DNA. Through epigenetics, we copy trauma, we copy phobias from grandparents and great grandparents without knowing about it.
Yes. Yeah. So definitely.
And that is through the body. So through the body, we have a chance to release emotions as well, to release all the trauma.
Yeah, it's so incredibly powerful and works in most cases. I always say I expect about 80% of people who come with phobias will get better. So I have such a high success rate working with all the tools that we've got. Regression, EFT, even NLP techniques can soften or cure a phobia. So there are so many different ways of working.
If it doesn't work, what is your experience? Why does it sometimes not work? Or there's something blocking it in some way?
It depends on the client. Again, some people don't regress very easily. Some people subconsciously are in EFT terms, we call them reversed, so they're not going to release. It's like there's a subconscious self-sabotage going on. Some people maybe have got a benefit to having the problem. Okay. So they get lots of attention if they've got the problem. Okay. It may be, and this may sound even more weird to people, but it may be a person who's got spirit attachments. Now, if they've got spirit attachments, then they've picked up a spirit somewhere which is hanging around them, and they can pick up on the energy of the spirit. So it could be there's all these other things going on, which could block the therapy or stop it from working.
Yeah. Could you go a little bit more in depth about the benefits of unconsciously / consciously holding on to a phobia or a problem in general? Yeah.
The most common one is getting attention. The most common one is a person gets attention. People give them lots of attention because they have this problem. And that's the most common one. The second most common one is they generally don't have to go out to work. If the phobia is so bad, I've seen people who are agoraphobic, which means a fear of outside spaces, and they couldn't even get out of the house. They wouldn't leave their own house. Now, that's a big phobia, but it could be that they don't actually have to go to work anymore. They get benefits. And so, life actually, apart from going outside, is actually quite a comfortable thing. You don't have to go out and get stressed. You don't have to do the Christmas shopping. You don't have to go and get stressed in busy traffic. You don't have to have a job, which can be stressful, because the government is paying you to stay at home. So there's not many people like that, very few, but in my experience, those are probably the two most common. I don't know, unless you've got any other thoughts on that.
I think that every problem has a benefit unconsciously, because those people that when we have that benefit, it's hidden from us most of the time. So when people hear that there's a benefit to it, I actually ask people when I work with them, I ask them, okay, so what's the benefit of having this problem? What benefit of having this problem? Yeah. Because you wouldn't have it if it wasn't a benefit. And that it's almost rude. It's almost like what kind of question is that? But it's when I ask that, it's always with respect. I just want to uncover, okay, so if there is a reason you're holding on to this, and if you were being really, really honest now with yourself and with me, what do you think is the benefit? I do, mainly is avoiding things, I think. Like you said, like avoiding the job, or like this guy had a hobby and he was so passionate about his hobby, and he worked offshore, and he developed what do you call it, senebetennelse, like an
inflammation in the body.
Inflammation, just like sore muscles, and he couldn't go to work. And of course he loved that because he could stay home and work with so when we worked with this, we used the EFT then. Yeah. And he was like, we did some work around this, and he was like, oh, I know the benefit of this. I can stay at home working with my project. Of course I don't want to go to work. Yeah. But he was one of the few that was like, that dared to just serve it to me and like say how it was. But he was conscious about it, but he wasn't conscious about it before I asked. And when he got conscious about it, that in itself actually changed the inflammation.
Changes the dynamics of it, yeah.
But I have to mention this though. When we worked on the inflammation on this arm physically, the inflammation moves from that arm to that arm. So how is that possible? The question then is, Dave, do you think was there an inflammation, or was it something like in the mind? I don't know. I'm asking if a person have inflammation in the left arm and it moves over to the right arm, the left arm is completely free from the inflammation, but the right arm felt exactly like the left arm. Yeah. What's going on? What do you think?
Well, it's the energy is still in there, so it's coming out just in a different part of the body. And you know, it's creating an inflammation somewhere else. As we know, when we work with pain and EFT, you know, we'll be tapping on a client and the pain starts in the right shoulder, and then at some stage the pain goes down into the left elbow, and you carry on tapping and it goes down into the right knee, and we call it chasing the pain. We go around the body until it gives up and releases it. And you think, well, how the hell can that happen? But the mind and body just are so connected. This can happen.
It does, and the moving of pain is also an indication of the shifting of the energy. So actually, I think the movement, when the pain moves from one part to another, it's a sign of that we're peeling the onion.
We're getting the layers. Very much so. Yeah.
Okay, so working with phobia, do you have some experiences with, you know, we're talking about, for example, spiders. That's a popular one. What is your experience there? What can be like a typical, what is like the thread in people when it comes to?
Certainly in some cases it's been in childhood, in this life and or past lives, where they've been locked in a small dark cupboard that they know has spiders in it. Certainly had a client who with a spider phobia, and she was in an orphanage in a previous life as a little girl, and she accidentally spilt some milk, and it was a vicious place to live. They were horrible to the children, this orphanage. And so she was beaten and then thrown into a dark coal house with all this old coal and old cobwebs and spiders everywhere. And she was extremely unhappy. You know, she was very hurt because she'd accidentally spilt the milk, but they hit her and smacked her and called her terrible names. And it was a big trauma for that little child. And then to be locked in this cupboard with things everywhere and spiders running around, etc., etc. Then she wasn't able to eat. They kept her in there for, I think, 24 hours to punish her. So, you know, that was just one spider phobia. One of the weirdest spider phobias I had with a client, there were 4 past lives causing hers. One of them, she was actually a baby squid in the sea in one of the past lives. And that's unusual because we don't get many animal past lives.
Wow.
Very few. We do get some, but not many. And she was a baby squid, and she said, I've been pushed out of the nest too early. And it's a terrible, it's vicious out there. Everybody's trying to kill me and eat me. And there was a near miss when a fish came past and virtually, you know, had a bite and just missed her. And eventually what she did is she went into some stones on the seabed, and there was a hole in the stones, and she sort of went into like a little cave in the stones. And it was all dark in there, but she felt safe for a few seconds because something was trying to eat her from the outside, and it couldn't get in. This big shark or a big fish couldn't get into this little cave. Yeah. And she felt okay. Oh, that's a relief. And then suddenly she realized that there was something was in the cave already before she got there, and this is coming for her now. And that was really creepy. Yeah. So that was terrifying for her, and she managed to get escape. But yeah, so the just spider phobias can often be something like that. Yeah. Where there's
and something completely different. I mean, we think often that if I'm afraid of spiders, that means that I have a lot of experiences with being afraid of spiders, but it actually can be something completely different. Like you said also that, okay, my father hit me, and when I fell to the floor, I saw a spider.
Yeah, yeah. So the subconscious is just putting pain onto spiders, and then the two go together. Yeah. The famous flying phobia case from the 70s with the woman who had a flying phobia, and she found that it was when she was being hit by a mum. Her mother hit her when she was 6 years old, and as she was being beaten, on the TV, there were in the corner of the room there was pictures of Concorde's first flight, the big aeroplane, and the subconscious put pain onto aeroplane. It just connected the two together. Yeah. So it isn't always about, just because you've got a phobia of donuts or holes in donuts, it doesn't mean to say that you've been attacked by a donut.
I know. I think this one is important for people to hear about as well. So I'm happy we're talking about it, because we're often searching for meaning. I mean, understanding why, what has happened to me? Why am I so afraid of this? And just knowing that, okay, things are not always logical, but they are when you understand the subconscious mind. Because for me, when we're talking about this, for me, this is logical. In my perspective, this is how it is and how it's working. Yeah. But for a person that haven't been going to a course, a hypnotherapy course, or aren't a therapist, or haven't been working on themselves in depth like this, they don't have that connection. So talking about it and attaching it to stories, like real therapy sessions and things we're working with, I think that's valuable for people. So I'm happy we're talking about this. Yeah. Just opening up this to understand more, and just knowing also that, okay, so there may be something that I don't know about, and it's actually okay for me to admit that. It's not being weak to admit that, okay, I'm carrying trauma, and I'm deep down inside, I'm feeling sad, I'm afraid, or I'm angry, or I'm feeling a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. I mean, we all carry loads of these emotions within us, and we try to hide it from ourselves even, and of course from other people. I mean, or maybe we'll live in a time now where this is actually turning around, where people are talking more about it, people are more open, more allowing themselves to be like courageous and being more vulnerable to talk about that. Okay, I'm actually suffering, I'm actually carrying stuff here. I think we need to move to that point as a collective, to actually just, okay, I have some shadows, I have some dark things within me, and it's okay because I'm a human, and I want to work this out. Can somebody help me?
Yeah.
Asking for help.
I think more people nowadays than ever before realize that we all carry emotional baggage. Whoever we are, we all carry emotional baggage. And the power of therapy, and the fact that therapy is so big nowadays, all the different types of therapy, people are much more open to this. It's a great time to be a therapist. I mean, can you imagine starting being a therapist 100 years ago, when all you had was sort of Freud and Freudian analysis and little else, and people with the stiff upper lip and nothing wrong with me. I mean, how the hell they could make a business in those days is beyond me. Well, I know Freud did, because he saw people many, many, many times. But we're in a very good place right now being therapists. This is the time to be a therapist.
It is.
And we're making big changes on Earth by helping people to let go of all of this baggage that they're carrying, to take off the mask. Everybody's hiding behind a mask.
Yeah, many masks.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
So imagine being a therapist 500 years ago. Then you would be burned, chopped off the head, hanged, or whatever. And I think that's actually, we can talk about that another time. But I think that is a huge reason why many healers, people that want to help people, actually have anxiety about working with people and charging money, because there's something happening in terms of, hey, what if they see me? What if they get me again? What if they catch me? But we can do that another time, because I do believe that we're beginning to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Is there something special you want to mention? Something you want to share, or?
I'm just thinking in terms of phobias. There's no reason for people to really hang on to phobias, because we have so many powerful techniques, and it isn't just about talking about it. It isn't all about regression. EFT sometimes will fix a phobia in seconds. Quite remarkable. NLP can fix phobias in minutes. I had a client with the bird phobia. Within 10 minutes of doing the fast phobia technique, it was gone.
Yes.
And 10 minutes. So, there's no need for people to carry these. So, and it's great when people get better. It's just an awesome thing when the client can say, yeah, I can go outside now and I'm not scared of dogs anymore, or, they've got their lives back.
Yes, that's the most important part.
Yeah.
It is.
But yeah, so it's a great job at times. It's fantastic being a therapist. And we take a lot of stick, but we do good jobs as well.
Yeah. That's how it is. That's why you came here.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. I really appreciate our time here together. It's
been great talking with you.
We're going to do this again.
Yeah.
Future.
Yeah.
And, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing everything, because what you're sharing here is definitely something that will create value there for people. Just widening the perspective and opening up to more, wanting to know more, wanting to learn more, and of course wanting to release all of that, or some of that baggage, because like you said, not only with focus but with everything, we don't need to hold on to it anymore. We can actually go through sessions where we can release it and integrate the resources that are actually held from us by holding on to the pain.
Yeah.
Because I do believe like the releasing of stuff is like integrating the strength that's behind it, or the wisdom within that experience that actually comes forth when we release the trauma.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great time as well, like you say, to not only be a therapist and help people, but also a great time to start working on yourself and and in a deep way.
Very much so. Yeah. It's a good point, actually, Kenneth. We all need therapy, and therapists need therapy. Human beings need therapy. So, the more we can do therapy and release our stuff, the freer we are. It's just, there's no excuse anymore.
And the more free we are, the better we feel inside, the more humanity will also raise vibration and consciousness, and opening up our hearts more to peace, to love, to freedom, to joy, to everything. Because carrying trauma shuts down the heart, we want to protect ourselves. So by freeing ourselves, we're opening up more, and that is definitely what the world needs right now. So get off your butts and do some therapy. I'm only kidding. It's free will for everyone, or you can go in and have a look at the course, the hypnotherapy course that Steve has, both for Super Potential, and his own academy, Lionheart Training. So I hope we see you in some way, shape, or form in the future.
And if anybody's got questions, send us messages. Send us some emails, give us a call. Happy to talk. Yeah.
Yes. All right, Steve. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Kenneth. Great being with you.
You too.
You too. Take care, and bye to everybody who's hopefully watched this. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.